Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. And today's question comes through us from Michael Kirst, W4MEK. And his question has to do with an antenna. He lives in an HOA, and his current antenna is actually one of these. This I got from MFJ. It's a weird looking thing. This right here is you mount this to a vertical pole, okay, and then right here you screw in a hamstick, and on this one you screw in the same hamstick, same type, different hamstick, of course. But the idea being that this one is insulated. Each one of these is insulated so that they can serve as a balanced antenna, 50 ohms-ish, and use two hamsticks, each of which is a quarter wave vertical, but put them horizontally. Okay, and that is what he does in his attic. He says, yeah, it kind of works. Now, he wants to know what he can do outside the house, and he gives me lots of ideas about doing a long wire. First of all, let's talk about the antenna he has up there. That antenna would sit on a pole, like you can get two pieces of steel chain link fence top rail, which are 10.5 feet long. And on one end, they're made smaller so it'll slip into the next one. Just make that vertical, some guys on the thing, and you've got a 20-foot mast for not very much money. Okay, and you could put these on it, and if you did it just outside your house in the backyard, it's very possible no one will know what you have, especially if you put some climbing vines around it, put some fake ones for, and decorate it or something like that. It look like bird cage holder up or something. And that right there would work better than it does in the attic, even if only it's a foot or two above the roof. You can put it right up against the house. Okay, that's one thing you can do with what you've got. Now, what he wants to do, he's got a long fence, and the long fence, about 55 feet, that he could put a long wire out along the top of the fence. That's not very high off the ground. It's the equivalent of a beverage antenna, which is great listening antenna, lousy transmit antenna. The reason it's great listening antenna is because the noise can be very low. So you crank up the volume so that the radio volume is loud enough to hear, but it's really a lousy receiving antenna and a lousy transmitting antenna. Something he wants to do is run that wire along his fence, get some white wire, put it there, nobody will see it, make sure it's insulated so nobody touches it. And then he wants to run the counterpoise along the lower thing. Now, if you've got two wires traveling like this, actually what you have is a transmission line, not an antenna. What I would suggest doing is running that counterpoise the other way. Okay? Even if it's out on the ground, get it insulated and run it around, or just sort of get it under the grass or something like that, right up against the house, so it can be kind of pushed under the ground, whatever you would like to do with that. I am not a fan of buried radials. I like my radials out on the surface, and I use insulated wire so you don't get weird coupling to ground in various places. It acts more like a counterpoise, like it's supposed to, rather than as a ground. The antenna itself is very well grounded. There's an 8-foot ground rod, and the 8-foot ground rod is also supplemented by several pieces of copper running out that are buried about 6 inches in the ground. So it's really well grounded. It's got about 30 radials, and it's 33 foot high. It's out in a tree, okay? So you can hardly notice the thing, and the upper part of it is green, so it works really well. Unfortunately, it's a step IR, big IR, and step IR has exited the amateur radio business. So you can't get that anymore. But the way it's a multiband is it actually raises and lowers the copper part of the antenna using a stepping motor and a reel down at the bottom. You could get the kind of antenna that you might like to put around that. But as I think I looked at your location, and there's no trees or anything you can really hide something in out there. So yes, it will work. I don't know how well it will work, but here's the thing. If you're going to use well, first of all, the impedance of an end-fed long wire is weird. It's different on every band, okay? So what you really need is an antenna tuner. This is one here that I picked up for not very much money. This is an open source antenna tuner, ATU 100 HF auto tuner, 1.8 megahertz to 30 megahertz. It needs power. This one needs power. You can put a little solar panel and a battery or something out there if you want. Or you can get it remotely tuned, which is what I'd recommend. I would recommend that the way you approach this is with a remote antenna tuner. LDG makes them. I think DX Engineering has one of their own. Chameleon has them too, or did. Of course, MFJ did, but they're gone. LDG might be your best bet. Put the tuner at the start of the long wire, okay? Now, ideally, the antenna tuner would be grounded. So you can put the antenna tuner near the ground, throw in a ground rod, ground it to the antenna tuner. That way, the coax between your station and the start of the long wire are grounded at both ends, so it acts as a nice transmission line in between. Then you have the tuner, the automatic tuner, and then run your ground wire wherever you want. The higher, the better. Longer is good, okay? And if all you can do is on your fence, give that a try. Now, you mentioned using either a 9-to-1 balun or a 1-to-1 balun for that thing. The problem, of course, is that the impedance will be wildly different on every band. Now, this is a wide range tuner, so you can use that. I would recommend the LDG because they've been doing this for decades. But you put that out there and it's run from in the house. It's you put the power goes on via a bias T, and it'll have a little box in your shack. You punch the tune button and it might have a light or two to indicate something. The power actually goes out over the coaxial cable as DC, okay? So something to think hard about. I know you've got the baluns. You could try them on different bands. Now, of course, if you don't ground the end of the transmission line where the long wire starts, the coax becomes part of the antenna. There's just almost no way around it. It becomes part of the antenna. And things can get weird, okay? Now, you can, if you want, play with coils or capacitors or something right there, but then what you're doing essentially is putting in an antenna tuner, and it will have to be changed for every band that you operate on. So I would recommend the LDG tuner. And that can be tucked away where nobody will see it. And again, I would ground it to a ground rod, bond that ground rod with a separate wire to your station ground rod, and of course, bond that to your utility ground, wherever it may be. Okay? So that is what I would recommend for you. Now, you can always just put it up and try it. There's nothing that says you can't try something just to try it. I mean, just trying it with your two baluns is pretty easy. I would go one or the other of the baluns. If you string them in series, you're kind of defeating the purpose of a balun. You're coming into a balun with a balanced input, and it's expecting an unbalanced input. So one or the other, put it up, give it a try. I mean, that's what amateur radio is all about, experimentation. So there you have it. I hope I've given you some ideas on what you can do with this. By the way, ICOM and Yaesu, and Kenwood may do this too, I'm not as familiar with their offerings. They sell remote antenna tuners. And the reason they do that is because in Japan, nobody has a yard big enough to put an antenna up. Okay, so what they recommend is this antenna tuner. And coming out of it is a long wire, and they say put up a long wire at least 40 feet long. And you can, it can have turns and everything in it. And then that way you can actually get a signal out on those. We tried an experiment here many videos ago where we took, it was the MFJ 993B antenna tuner, it's an automatic antenna tuner. I just put it outside with a battery and then run a 35-foot piece of wire. And it would tune up on whatever we wanted. We used it as a virtual remote antenna tuner, okay? So there you have it. So, Michael, I hope that answers some of your questions and gives you some ideas what to do in that difficult situation where you have an HOA ready to issue a fine if one of your blades of grass exceeds 3 inches tall. I mean, they do strange and weird things. So, anyway, there you have it. Until we next meet, 73.